Are you working on a book right now?
This is the worst question you could ask right now. This is like the haram question to ask.
Really?
It's sort of like puts you in a position where you're like, what have you done with your life? Basically, you talk all you game now.
That's jokes. All right, so we're gonna officially start. Assalamu alaikum.
Ahlan wa sahlan. Hey,
Oh my God. Yo, I have to not pitch it around. That would, you know what? You know what's crazy? I thought this might happen. I'm like, this thing doesn't have any like a rubbery material
so it's like
slip proof. Yeah. So yeah, you guys didn't see that, and then jerry rig a little seat that just.
That's a great start.
It is a great start. Well, with that being said, welcome everyone to Journey Podcast episode 3. And we have our esteemed guest, Mohamed Morshed. Thank you for joining the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You know what? I asked you for a bio, but I don't have it in front of me right now, so I can't read it. But you know what? I'll tell you what. I'll read it. I'll find it. Unless you want to spitball and just kind of tell the people a little bit about yourself.
You like making me feel narcissist, like a narcissist twice a day. Okay, fine.
You just
yeah.
Just lay it on thick,
I am a writer who is passionate about just writing, storytelling in general. I love writing about the immigrant experience, about the Muslim experience, Yemeni culture, history. And I shoot videos, post videos on YouTube, on Instagram about writing, reading habits, productivity, and just literature in general. So yeah, that's what I'm about.
That's awesome, man. Did you always have a passion for creating, or like what like kind of drove you in this direction? What like sparked that interest?
I think for like creating in general, I was actually anti-social media for a very long time, especially during like my college years. I was off social media. I did not want to be like on Facebook or on Instagram, and I didn't even have accounts. So I made it a point of me not even creating an account. And I thought like if you're on social media, then you're probably robbing yourself out of like the joy of the real life. Mm-hmm. And so for a very long time, I had that mentality, and then slowly I just got sucked into like creating an account and just scrolling and just the whole addiction process. And then I read a book called Show Your Work, which literally changed the way I perceived how social media works and what it means to be a social media content creator. And I hate that term, but for me, it was a moment where I thought, like, I'm passionate about storytelling, about writing, about reading, and I just wanted to share the things that I learned about writing and all these things that I was passionate about. And social media is one place where you can share like your passions. So, and it doesn't have any gatekeepers the way newspapers or other format like magazines or the other formats where you can share your work in. And it felt more authentic than anything else. And as long as you have, and I started when I was a little bit older, so I was a bit wiser, so I'm not just posting anything I want or anything I feel like is gonna get likes. So if you're going into it with a mentality, I'm just sharing my work, sharing what I'm passionate about, trying to influence or show people that this thing is valuable, and then you're just aiming to get like-minded people to be interested in the same thing, then it's fine. But then once you start thinking, or if you start thinking about the likes and the comments and all the vanity of it, then it will probably do you more harm than good.
Yeah. Social media is like such a powerful tool, but like Spider-Man or Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And I think like, as we were talking about that, there's so many people out there in the world that don't have social media, right? And their life just goes on fine, right? So it's almost like you probably would you say it's factual to say if you didn't start a social media account, maybe you wouldn't go down this path of like content creation and things of that nature?
For sure. I would not have shared anything, or for sure. And I think is part of it is also a learning experience, because I mean, we can get into this later on, but for me, social media literally has changed my life in many ways, because, and let's get into this, is that, so for me, the way it started was, I graduated from a master's program in creative writing, and I found myself alone again after 2 years of just working with awesome people that were passionate about writing and reading. And now I don't have anybody, or I was connected to the same group that I graduated with, but then it didn't feel the same. It didn't feel like I was connected to a wider community. Then I thought, maybe if I start sharing videos about writing and about productivity and about reading habits, then I will get connected to a community of people that are passionate about the same thing that I'm passionate about. So I started shooting with my MacBook, and for me, I started as a podcast. I called it Hazawi Podcast, or Hazawi Podcast, which means stories. And I had a couple of guests in the very beginning. I just had my friends, and then I started niching down to just writers. And the first learning moment for me was I started connecting with other writers that I would otherwise not be connected with. And these were writers in like newspapers, in like online websites, who publish book. I got connected somehow. I got very lucky with a author. Her name is S.A. Ali, who is a New York Times bestseller. She has like multiple books published, and I got connected with her publisher, who sent me like her books for free to read before the interview.
Wow.
Which I thought was, okay, I'm getting free books now.
Yeah.
But then like I got connected with her, and before we recorded the podcast, we just had a conversation about like my own writing and where's it going, and she gave me a couple of tips. We recorded the podcast, and afterwards she gave me more tips. So I'm like, this is more than just like being on social media and just posting.
Right.
This is greater than just
right.
having a following. There's more benefits to this. So I thought maybe I should invest in a better camera. So I bought a Sony camera that cost like $2,000, which is the craziest.
That's steep. That's a big jump, right?
A very, very big jump. And so I thought, like, I'm just gonna go all in. And then I bought a big light, which costs, I don't know, like $1,000. I mean, it was a very painful month for me in terms of my spending. And so I started just recording podcasts, and I think I spent overall that month about $4,000 to $5,000 one shot on equipment and all other things. And I started posting. I recorded a couple of podcasts. Then there was a shift for me. I thought the podcast process for me took a lot of my time, a lot of my energy, and I wasn't satisfied. So I thought, okay, maybe I should shift for a while just to focus on like my own process. So I thought just YouTube videos, talking to the camera of the stuff that I like to talk about, and maybe the things that I think people who were like me 3-4 years ago would find beneficial. So more like what would I tell myself, my younger self type of avenue. And so I started posting about that. And then maybe 6-7 months ago, the executive director at my office, I work for New York City Public Schools, found out that I have a podcast and found out that I post videos. And so she asked me, so you know how to handle a camera and you know how to shoot videos? And I said, yeah, I do. So she's like, all right, there's this program that we're launching, and I just want a video to be posted on social media, on the social media page of the department. And so can you do that? I'm like, yeah. So I brought my gear, I brought my light, brought everything to the office, and we shot it. And I think it was on a remote day, so everybody was working remotely. We were the only people, or a few others were in there as well, just shooting that video. And we tried to get it posted, and they wouldn't post it. And she was so frustrated. So she said, okay, since they would not post it, because there's like a vetting process in the media communication team. I mean, it's a whole thing, it's a whole team. Yeah. She said, let's create our own Instagram page and post it there. And this is literally in the any city agency, when this is like you're crossing lines by creating your own social media page. Right. It's not an easy thing. But she was like, I'm taking the risk. Let's just do it, and we'll say sorry later. I created an Instagram page. I posted that video. I get like 200 views, which was like nothing. We have like 1 million students in the city. Right. So we do that, and she liked it. So she's like, you just post more. So we started posting more. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing my job, which is like training people at the school level, at the district level, and then doing this in the side. So I'm putting more hours than I normally do. And we post a couple more videos, and then one of them goes viral, gets like, I don't know, like 12,000 views, which was like really nice. Wow. And then one time I was in the lunchroom, And then this guy from the media department of the media team comes and asks like one of the people in the lunchroom if they knew anybody who was like good at podcasting. And then that person happened to be someone I worked with like a long time ago. She said, "Oh yeah, Mohamed has a podcast." He's like, "Oh, he does?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." So he called me over. He's like, "Do you want to be a podcast producer for the department?" I'm like, "Sure." And he's like, "All right, let's get you applied, and then we'll talk then." And so we're talking. He gives me like an informal interview. He brings me to the podcast room. Apparently we had a podcast room in that building, which I didn't know, which was like literally a playground for people who are interested in tech,
Right.
And cameras, because it had everything that you would want.
Wow.
And he was very enthusiastic. Like, "I'm going to get you hired. Anything you want, I'll make it happen." And then a week later, he comes back to me and tells me, "Actually, we can't do it anymore because this someone at the executive level doesn't want to hire for that position." My executive director hears about that, and she said, "So they technically offered you a position, and then they pulled it away." I'm like, "Yeah, but it's fine." She's like, "Okay, I'll talk to people."
Yeah.
And then a month later, at my office, a position get posted. They called it a strategic affairs specialist. But when you read the description, it's all, can you handle a camera? Can you edit videos?
Right,
can you
right.
post on social media? Can you like
Right.
handle an audience of the department? And I applied and I got it. I invested $5,000 2 years ago and learned everything from scratch. Editing videos, shooting, posting on social media. And 2 years later, got offered a position, got maybe like $20,000 salary increase,
Awesome.
and work that I've never dreamed to do. Like literally, it's a career shift.
Dude, that's awesome.
And it all started because one day I was sitting as someone who never posted on social media,
Right.
did not even enjoy social media as many people would.
Yeah.
I just decided maybe I should share about my passions on social media and like see where it goes.
That's amazing. That's such an amazing story, and it's so inspiring. You know, like one of the early career advice that I got was, you need to be doing the job that you want before you get that job.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you want that promotion, you want, like, to take on a new role, you need to already have some aptitude in that area before you get it, right? And I think also, like, I think nowadays, especially, like, everyone's on social media, right? Everyone has their own page and they're doing things. And if it's something that you really enjoy, and it's a passion of yours, you can put in that time, and eventually doors will open themselves for you, right? Yeah. Like, those opportunities will present themselves. It's like, kind of, you have that preparation, and then when the opportunity presents itself, you're already there. You've done the preparation in advance, and you're ready to take advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? At my office, there were a few people that were even more qualified than me to be in this position. So we have a person who has a master's degree in communications. And she had worked with like, she worked in Dominican Republic for like the government agency. I mean, she had the experience and she had the degree. She was like in media rooms, scripting, telling people what to say on camera, and all of that process. And we had someone with like 20 years of experience of shooting documentaries.
Wow.
I just happened to be the person who was willing to do the work before I got paid for doing the work. They were not willing to do the work before the work was demanded.
Right.
And nobody promised me for a position before the position was available.
Right.
Nobody promised me that the extra work that I was doing was going to like translate into a position or into a raise or anything. And for me, it wasn't even an expectation. I wasn't expecting anything from it.
Right.
But in the back of my head was, if I just do this more often, I would just like learn from more situations to handle the camera better, to script better, to be able to like just make other people who are not me more comfortable in front of the camera. And for me, that was valuable enough as just an experience and a learning moments.
Right.
But then it just translated to something much bigger than I thought.
That's awesome, man. That's such a good story. That's like yeah, I think for like maybe folks that are like early in their career, or maybe students or whomever, like that are watching this right now, I feel like they can take that as almost like a template for whatever aspirations that they have, right? To go out there and just to put in the time, put in the work, and uh, it's just it's a matter of time, honestly, right? Like eventually, like something will open up.
Yeah, and I think for most of us want changes in our careers, want to go into a next step or shift to something else, but we don't take enough steps that will open the doors for opportunities to come in. So let alone seeking opportunities, just taking the steps for more opportunities to come in. One anecdote that I remember is one of our common friends opened a business, and I thought, I have a camera, so I'll go and during the grand opening, and I'll just shoot videos of the grand opening and then give him the footage, and whatever he does with it, he does with it. So I was gonna go to the grand opening anyways because I wanted to support him, and I shot the video, and like when I was there, a person saw me and he's like, "Is this your camera?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, you are they paying you for this?" I'm like, "He's my friend." So he says, "I have an event tomorrow. Can you come and I'll pay you for it?"
Right.
And I was very transparent with him. I told him, "Look, I'm a beginner.
Right.
This is literally my first time out like industry with a camera. Most of my shots are indoors, in my home." And he's like, "Well, I love beginners. You're probably cheaper. Come." Now the unfortunate thing was that I was working, so
Right.
I didn't have actual time to like take off work and
Got it.
attend that event.
Yeah.
But the point of the matter is that just walking around with a camera, doing something that I wasn't paid for, just opens an opportunity for someone to tell me, "Can you do this also for me?" And it's also like, again, going back to creating more spaces for you to learn the thing that you're trying to get very good at.
Yeah.
Is not you're not going to get good at it at home.
Right.
You will be good at it when you put it in public.
Yep.
And I think that's also what social media is for me, is that I'm practicing in public.
Right.
I'm practicing the way I say things to the camera. I'm practicing how valid my presumptions are about writing, about reading, about anything that I'm sharing. Are they valid? Are they working? Do people resonate with them? And I think the more I do that, the sharper I will become at speaking about the thing that I'm trying to get good at speaking about, which is like writing and everything else. And the more I will know what people will connect with. Yeah.
Yeah, like to that, like just walking around with the camera is kind of like a superpower. Like you just it's a great conversation starter, right?
Yeah.
People just come up to you, like you have a YouTube channel, or you're famous, or whatever the case is, right? And then like you said, like people will just come and they might request like, "Oh yeah, I do real estate, or I do, I play basketball games, come shoot a game for me." Things like that. And also even more so is when they see your work, right?
Yeah.
If somebody sees your work, they're like, "Okay, or they're just inspired by it, honestly. It's like, oh wow, like you see the edit that this person put together, or you see the photography or whatever, and it's like, oh, I want that for myself.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to do that, but this person does. So I think especially like you've seen the prices for like wedding like photography and videography, insane.
Yeah.
Right? And initially I used to think like, bro, like why do they charge so much, like ridiculous amounts, like $1,000 for like whatever 2 hours or something like that, something ridiculous, right? But then you also see like all of this gear is very expensive.
Yeah.
And then the time, right?
Yeah.
Like even like you see like this setup that I have right now, this is the fruits of like, I want to say almost like years of effort,
Yeah.
right? Like I've wanted to do something of this nature for a long time, right? And it was slowly chipping away at it. Like I guess I'm not the variety to just go all in, like just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy everything on the list and just like set it up. It's just like, okay, yeah, maybe I'll get this light. Oh, let me do a little backdrop that might be cool. Like even this table, I just happened to have this table. I didn't, because initially I was like, what, I want two couches and with like a little coffee table in between, and like a very typical podcast setup. And I was like, you know what? I'm not there yet. Let me
Yeah.
start with this. It's fine. It'll still look good, and then who knows, in the future maybe have different arrangements, things like that. So I very much agree. I concur with that sentiment that you just need to just get your reps in, and you'll learn, and new opportunities will kind of sprout out of that.
But what got you started?
So you know what's funny? So I went to, it's called Edward R. Murrow High School in Brooklyn, and it's like a performing arts school, right? So I guess just because of that, like a lot of our teachers like kind of like talked about like artsy things. Like we used to go to Broadway shows, and then in my senior year I took a broadcasting class, right? And I mean, to be completely honest, I don't know what that class was about. Just because I don't know if you know, like senior year in high school, like
Yeah.
a lot of kids are not going to all of their classes.
But those are other kids.
Yeah. Not me. I went to every single one. But so I took this broadcasting class, and the final project was to do a PSA. It's like a public service announcement. Like it's just kind of like don't do drugs, kids, or like things like that, or
Yeah.
whatever, right? And we had to do like basically make 5 like videos of that nature. So and you know, me being a perpetual procrastinator, I waited until like literally like the weekend before the project was due, and I just went out with all my friends, and we shot a bunch of videos, and it was just so much fun. And I don't know if you remember back in the day, there was a Windows Movie Maker. It was like it was
Yeah.
like the stock like Microsoft video editor.
Yeah.
And it's actually still on YouTube somewhere. I know where it is, but I'm not gonna tell anybody. So people that know, they know. And yeah, after that, I've always wanted to make videos. I enjoyed, like, I don't know if you remember like Vine,
Yeah.
and like all these like short stupid videos.
Yeah.
Like I remember we used to like just, me and my friends just being a bunch of idiots. Like we used to make like parody videos of stuff, just doing dumb things, you know.
Yeah.
And because that was like the time when people would just have like little, what it was, like 6-second videos of just like
Yeah.
doing nonsense. So, and it was just a lot of fun. So that's something that I enjoyed doing, and I always kind of wanted to do, especially. And then let's say in college and stuff, I started traveling a lot more, and then I think at the time vlogs were also very popular. So I wanted to vlog because I'm traveling and I'm seeing things, and I kind of wanted to share that with people. So that was an interest of mine. And then so most recently, like, and I guess I get stuck very often with like analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like, oh man, this was shot in my phone and it doesn't look right,
Yeah.
or this and that. So I just like for years, like I probably have like so much footage saved up over the years
Yeah.
that I've never released, just because it was just like, yeah, this is not perfect, that's not perfect, and blah blah blah. And yeah, now it's just like I feel like I've gotten it to the place where it's like polished enough that I feel comfortable sharing it with the world. And yeah, you know, that those are some of the things I still want to do, because I guess I've always kind of wanted to do it. So podcasts, like I watch a lot of tech review channels, and I love little gadgets and stuff like that. So I thought it'd be great to just do reviews on tech, you know.
Yeah.
And then like I said, like the vlogging, and then podcasts. I consume so many different podcasts. It's just like it's just fun, you know. Just listening to people chop it up, you learn things, and yeah.
I'm curious about your top 3 podcasts.
You know what? You've asked me this question
I know.
before. And as soon as I said it, I knew you were going to ask it. I'm like, this is the train of thought. I could see it in his eyes. He's coming with that question. Man, top 3 podcasts. You know, it's such a tough question for me. It's because, like, I don't search like a specific podcast like on my feed.
Yeah.
It's just recommended podcasts on like topics that I'm interested in. For example, like I'm a big fan of like the NBA, so there's like there's one with like JJ Redick. He's like a former basketball player, and he just talks about like teams. So, and it's let's say he's talking about like a team I follow, like I don't know, he's talking about like Kyrie Irving or something. I'll watch that, you know. I'll click on that, or, you know. And so it's not per se, I don't think it's the podcast, like the people that create the podcast. It's more so the topic.
Interesting.
But what I will say is the people are important. Like I wouldn't just listen to anyone's podcast on that topic that I like.
Yeah.
I also like that person's personality, and I respect, like I feel like that person has credibility, can share something of value. So that's why I also watch it. But yeah, I've seen so many. I've watched like Andrew Tate podcasts, you know, like I mean, say what you will of, it's a funny dude. So it's so many, man. Like top 3 is a
In your
tough
recent
one.
favorites, maybe that's a better question.
but you understand what I'm saying? It's not
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
podcast itself. It's just the topic. Like I honestly couldn't tell you like certain let me see. Uh
Maybe this is a better question actually.
okay.
Is there one or an episode that
Yeah.
you've listened to more than once?
No.
Okay. All right.
Is that a thing?
No, it's not a thing. I mean, for me, it is.
Really?
But yeah, so there are episodes where I've listened, whether it's podcasts or even YouTube videos that I
Right.
listen to more than once.
Interesting.
Just because I feel like, and this is a thing also for books. There are books that I've read 3-4 times.
Okay.
Just because
Yeah.
it's that book for me,
Yeah.
and it puts me in a certain mental state that I like to return to, but
Yeah.
forget what it feels like or what it means to me.
Interesting.
So for me, there is this podcast that's in Arabic. It's called Thamanias. It's like 8, the number 8.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the name is representing the number 8.
Yeah.
But then there's this psychologist who speaks about relationships.
Yeah.
And relationships from every angle, whether it's family, like marriage relationships, kids relationships, everything else, your relationship with yourself, as just like grown personality. And it's like I think it's like 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And every time I listen to that podcast, I think I've listened to it 3 times already, and it has like more than 100. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it has more than 100 million views.
Wow.
It's like one of the most popular podcasts in Arabic.
That's crazy.
It's like if I'm not mistaken, is the most listened Arabic podcast like in the planet.
Okay. And how do you listen to it? Are you just literally just sitting there solely focused on the podcast,
No,
or are you doing
never.
other things?
Most of the time, I'm doing other things,
Like driving or
driving,
or
most
chores
of the
or
time.
whatever. Okay.
I think the second time I listened to it, I actually sat down and just watched it.
Okay.
Because it's also on video on
Yeah.
YouTube, so I just sat down and watched the whole thing.
Yeah.
The first and third time I just listened to it because I just wanted to see what the experience would be. That if I watched it with the same thing, I just was more focused, and I don't take notes.
You know, that's so interesting too, though, because like I know some people even like rewatch movies and cartoons or whatever, like let alone like books or podcast. Like I don't think I've ever done that. Like
That's fascinating.
right, like
Yeah.
because I'm trying to understand the psyche behind it. Like it's because to me it's like, oh, I already know what's going to be said or what, or you know what happens basically, right? So it's just like I rather watch something new, and I feel like in general the sentiment with even with podcasts, and this is something I've struggled with, is it needs to be current, you know, like people need to know, like people want to tune in to something that's like just like present day. I guess since we're talking about like in my industry they call them like BKMs, like best known methods or best practices, right? So I wanted to kind of talk about your creative process. Like, do you have something that's like set in stone, like, okay, I'm gonna like draft something and then I'm gonna record this, blah blah blah, or is it just kind of like go with the flow?
And this when it comes to videos.
You know what? That's a great question. Sure, we could talk about videos, but just I feel like, so you write, right? You create videos,
and they're very different processes.
They are. Okay. So let's hear about them.
So when it comes to videos, so for me, it always starts for YouTube videos, which is a very traditional process step. It starts with the title, then the thumbnail. So I'll start just listing a bunch of titles that I'm interested in like creating videos about, and also I think people need. Because it's sort of like that magical spot where you want to post or share about the things that you are passionate about because you don't want it to be boring, but also you want it to also be something that people actually care about. Otherwise, you're just creating art for the sake of art, which is fine, but then who is it really for? And you know, this is like a very is a very interesting conversation because it also touches on intention at that point, because is your intention is to get fame out of it, or is your intention is to get like eyeballs towards it,
right?
And it's a very tricky business, but at the end of the day, I think for me is I want to shoot or I want to post about something that I'm passionate about, that's for sure, regardless what people think.
Yeah.
And it took me years to get over that because like I'm a writer, I'm passionate about storytelling and reading.
Yeah.
I'm also an immigrant from Yemen.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about the Yemeni community, if you're not talking business, you're you're like you're not gonna pass. Like
Yeah.
you will be the joke of the conversation.
Uh-huh.
And so for a long time, and most of it is in my head,
Yeah.
because people don't really care about you
100%.
or what you do. Like they have
100%.
their own worries and they or probably like
Absolutely.
people are going through like tougher time
Absolutely.
than worrying about you sharing a video. So like, but then I still had to go through like a year or 2 years of thinking about starting that podcast before I actually shot my first episode. So for me, then it starts with the title, then thinking about the thumbnail, which is like because of the platform that I'm publishing in, which is YouTube. The thumbnail and the title are the package of a package of attraction for the viewer.
So you start with that. You
So I start with that.
Okay. Okay.
The idea is embedded in the title,
Right.
the idea of the video. So for example,
Yeah.
last week I shot a video called so I wanted to shoot the idea started. I read so many self-help books when I was in college and a little bit after college, but then my passion is in fiction. I write fiction, and I knew what the difference in terms of like what I feel and what I experience when I read self-help books, non-fiction books, and when I read fiction. And what I'm trying to argue is that if you only read self-help, you will literally kill your soul, and it will just deprive you from like a life experience that fiction gives you. This is my argument. Now, some people hate this and they're like, what are you talking about? I read none. Or it's like, I read so much self-help books, I just can't do fiction because fiction isn't my thing.
Yeah.
I felt like over years, so it started with the idea. Then I'm like, all right, how can I create a title that communicates that? So then I will write 10 titles, 10 different titles. If I'm ambitious, I will go over, sometimes 15, sometimes 20. And then the best title that I think communicates the idea like wins. And then that's what I stick with. And then that will actually shape the structure of the video. And then I will create a thumbnail that sort of like communicates the story behind the title. That title of the video ended up being why you should not only read self-help books. You can read self-help books. The argument became, but also put a little variety there and read fiction as well. Yeah. Because in the idea did start as black and white in my head. No, stop reading self-help books. They're not that helpful. They're repetitive. And read fiction because they have more life, more experience, more depth, and more whatever.
By the way, and this video is on YouTube?
I'm gonna publish it maybe in a week or two.
Okay. On YouTube.
On YouTube.
Okay.
So that's something I just recorded recently, and then it will get published in May. So this is my May scheduled video. So then, when it comes to scripting, then it has to communicate to the title, because right now the title dictates the structure of the video. The idea started self-help books, bad. Fiction, good. But the title then became self-help books are okay, but they should not be the only thing that you should read. You should also read some fiction. Then the script ended up listing 5 reasons why you should not only read self-help books and what the benefits are for reading a variety of books like fiction and novels and short fiction. So that's the process for shooting videos.
That's very interesting. You know, I mean, maybe it's a testament to like how like raw or you know, unpolished my process is. It's very much just like almost random.
Yeah.
It's like I just shoot a bunch of different things, and then once I get into the editing, that's when I weave the story, which is kind of like like very chaotic and like a lot of times I'm like, okay, this doesn't fit and this doesn't make sense, but I feel like a lot of the times the things that I'm trying to do just it's very difficult to script all of it, right? Like
I feel like vlogging doesn't necessarily have rules.
Right.
You go around, you shoot videos, and most likely people who are watching those videos are interested in you as a person and as a personality more than about what you're like doing.
Right.
And they will watch anything that you produce, which is fine. With talking head videos or with educational videos, as they call them in the industry, you will get better at it's not scripting. Is getting over the first draft of the idea. Because it's one thing to like I can just sit down and like just talk to the camera. I don't know what will come out. I don't know what I will say. I don't know how structural it will be. But then if I go back and just edit myself of like talking, it will be like a nightmare. I don't
Yeah.
think I will get anything coherent out of it.
Right. Right.
I think the process of going through the title, thumbnail, and then the script, and the script is not word per word, it's just bullet points. It's just for me to get over the first draft,
Yeah.
so that when I'm talking to the camera, I know what the main argument or the main value that I'm trying to deliver.
Yeah.
With a vlog, and I don't have any experience on that. This is just anecdotal. I just feel like for people who I watch their vlogs, I'm just interested. I'm interested in them as people.
Effectively, almost all of this is kind of random, right? I have a
Yeah.
few guiding questions, and we talked about a few ideas we want to touch on, but it's still very much random.
Yeah.
And then when I'll go back and I do it in post, maybe like there might be certain parts that are just a bit dry that I'll trim out, and then the points, the main points I think that bring the most value to the audience.
Yeah.
I'll try to build around that.
Yeah.
So that's generally my process. Which is very chaotic, but you know what? We'll see where it goes. And like, I guess it's a good transition. Like, we'll see where it goes. Like, so let's talk about like what your vision is. What ideally, Mohamed Morshed in like, I don't know. I don't want to give a time frame of 5-10 years, whatever the case is, but like, what's like, where would you like to take this kind of creative process or creative kind of direction you've taken?
Yeah. I mean, it's very hard to say because I don't have a sort of like final goal for me that I'm going after. For me is, how do I create a system or a sustainable process for me to do this on a monthly basis without burning out, with enjoying the process, and still like maintain like my general lifestyle, which is like spending time with my family, playing soccer on the weekend, going out with friends every now and then.
Yeah.
And with this not like conflicting with like my writing and my and all the other things that I'm doing. So like that's for me a bigger goal than anything else. And I'm there. I'm almost there.
Right.
And like this is 2 years later.
Right.
I feel like I'm almost there.
Yeah.
It took me like 2 years to feel like I'm actually comfortable where I am right now. I can push a little bit more in terms of like just doing more stuff for the script, for the titles, for the topics, just thinking about the ideas a little bit more. Because for me it's like the opposite. I don't want it to be just random. I want it to be like ideas that I think people would need.
Right.
Like I just want to fulfill that need, because for me, the way it started, just my passion about writing, I just read so much books. I mean, I was just reading, looking back at it right now, I'm like, how did I have that time? I was reading a book a week, and that was like a regular thing.
Wow.
I was like reading a 300, 400 page book a week.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that was a big deal. I thought like some people just did that, and there are people that do that. It's when my friends found out that I was reading, and I found out that they've never read the book in their life, that I thought like I'm weird. And like and this thing that I'm trying to do is like very different, and I don't have an environment for it. And so I started thinking, maybe I should write too. Like I want to create the worlds that I'm reading about, but it's gonna be my own world. Like I want to write about Yemen. I want to read about the Muslim experience. I want to read about all these things that makes me me. And then I sat with a professor of mine in college, and I shared this with him. And he was my political science professor, but he was a writer. And so what he had us do, part of the course is do a writing workshop. Now, a writing workshop is literally, we would submit a piece to him, or like a 1 page, or like half a page, whatever whatever he asked. And then he would literally go line by line. He will pick one of the students, and he will go line by line and comment on what makes the sentences work. I mean, it was like sentence level writing workshop. I mean, it was something that I've never experienced before. That was literally my favorite class. I wasn't even a political science major. Right. It was something I took as an elective. And it was my favorite class. He was my favorite professor. He was the one that I was comfortable enough to tell him, like, what you're doing is the thing that I'm trying to do. Like, this writing thing, I didn't know that I wanted to do it, but now that you're talking about it in the way you're talking about it, like I want to know more about sentences and about storytelling and how to do the thing that you're talking about. And he told me, journal every day about anything you want, no rules, about your life, about what you went through, about what you're going through, about the weather, anything that comes across your mind, just pin it to the pages. So I did that for a very long time. So I was like, I'm gonna journal every single day. So like I would journal later at night or before I go to school in the morning. And then at some point, I started realizing that I was writing about characters and about events that never happened to me. And then I was taken back. I'm like literally lying right now.
In your diary?
In my diary. Like I'm like lying to myself.
Like what? Give me an example.
So like I was recollecting this one time where I had a fight with with like my neighborhood kids back in Yemen. So my house happened to be in Yemen. I lived in Sana'a, in the capital city. So my house happened to be in the corner of 3 neighborhoods. So I was basically part of 3 different groups. So the neighborhood up front was like one group, and then to my right was another group, and then to my left was another group. And they were all enemies. I was basically their bridge. I wasn't interconnecting anybody, but like I had the privilege of like, I wanted to play soccer, I'll go there. If I wanted to like play something else, if they were playing soccer on the other side, I'll go there. So I had a
best
privilege.
of all worlds.
Exactly. Yeah. But then the problem is that also put me in a position where if I went to play soccer with one group while they needed me for a soccer game in the other neighborhood, I got in trouble with the other group. And so this one time where I had a fight with one of the left neighborhood group, and he like called everybody else, and they jumped me. And so I remember it was at noon, and the streets were empty because people were either having lunch or taking a nap. And I think there were like 6 of them. They like literally just beat me down, like just punching me, and I was just like rolled up, covering my face.
How old are you?
I think I was probably like 10, I would say, maybe 9.
It's rough, man.
I know. I mean, I have stories. I mean, I have scars on my face. I have like stitches on my head. If I like shave my head bald, you'll see how many stitches I have.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I can get into those stories as well. And then so that day, all I remember is I like got up while I was getting beat. Got up and I saw one of them like right in front of my face, and I just like swung and I hit him straight, clean shot. On his face, and I ran. When I tried to write about this story, I introduced so many other people, and like I did much more than just one punch. It was like Bollywood movie. Yeah. I like, I was a karate black belt. I mean, you name it. And then I just started thinking like, what am I doing? This is not right. And like, so it was an ethical moment for me to assess. And then I went back to that professor and I told him, look, like this is what happened, and like I'm kind of troubled, which is like for a 19 to 18-year-old, for him to have that trouble with a privilege, I guess. But it was a thing that like kept me up at night. And he told me, why don't you just write fiction? Yeah. And okay, I'll give it a shot. And literally, I started writing fiction stories. I mean, looking back at it right now, what I was writing right at the time, they were not even stories. They were just like whatever. I think they were the attempts that are necessary for me to go through to get into the stories that I wrote later. The rite of passage type of writing. And it felt like the most liberating thing I can ever experience when it came to writing. It literally, like, because in fiction, there's no limits. I am going to write about characters that I don't know. I can shape however I want, but then they will communicate in storytelling mode the most valuable ideas I can ever imagine. And I don't have to like write about myself. People don't have to know like how many kids I have or how many, what is my relationship with my parents. Some of those things will make it there, but you can never tell. You can never put your finger on it. Yeah. And so for me to go back all the way to the content creating and what I want to see next is I just want to be able to give more people that are in the position that I was in 5, 6, 7 years ago, that feeling that I felt when I was with that professor. Is like you can do this. You just have to journal. You have to read a lot. And you have to not have a lot of expectations out of the results and just follow the process, which is like just write a lot, read a lot, do the thing that you like to do, and write the stories that you want to actually read. If you right now think about how many stories or how many novels are about Yemen, I mean, there are none.
Right.
And I just wanna, for me, the vision is to be the window for Yemenis to see themselves in literature, and for non-Yemenis to see what is it like to be a Yemeni.
Are you working on a book right now?
This is the worst question you could ask a writer. This is like all writers. If you ask all writers, this is like the haram question to ask.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
It's just like
yes and no.
I mean, it's not a yes and no. It's sort of like puts you in a position where you're like, what have you done with your life? Basically, you talk all your game now.
That's jokes.
I'm working on a story. I don't know, is it in a very beginning stages. So I have a story published. It's called Home is a Holiday in a magazine called Phoebe. This is Phoebe magazine. That's PH. This is like the worst thing I try to do right now. Is like spell
EBA?
OBA something like that.
Oh, Phoebe. Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
OEBA.
Yeah. This is also like the thing that I told myself before. I'm like, don't try to spell anything, because you're a writer and you don't know how to spell. I can get into that. So I have a story there called Home is a Holiday. It'll give you a taste if you read it. On the things like I'm passionate about. I think it's a really good story. I'm very proud of it. And that's the other thing. Like, if you publish stuff, if you put out stuff that you're proud of, this is the thing that keeps you going.
Yeah.
And that's one story I'm very, very proud of. And like, there are videos that I posted there that I would never mention, because like I'm like, they're not that good.
Right.
But then there are videos where I'm like, you should go watch that video. It's good. It's called Home is a Holiday, and just talks about a Yemeni guy who comes in from Yemen as a lottery winner for a visa, and this is his first day coming into the United States. It's a very hard trip. He had to go in debt to come here. He's alone. He doesn't speak English. And he has to go to the bathroom because he was too embarrassed to get up during the airplane to go to the bathroom. And he gets here and he can't communicate with anybody. But then he gets a second screening or a second search. And so like he's put in a room where a bunch of other Yemenis to get a background check. But then he has to go pee. And so just playing around with that tension where he's held to be second screened for a very long time, and it's told from two perspectives. So part of the story is told from his perspective, and then the other part is told from the TSA agent who's doing the screening for him. That TSA agent also hates her job. She wants to go home because it's a holiday, and she was supposed to work a half a day, but then they got her working a full day, and she's frustrated. And then she's facing with this guy who's trying to go to the bathroom, so she's like, no, sit down. And then like the story goes on, and if you read it, you'll know what happened. But then there's the sort of thing that I want to show. Like, it's a very particular experience that Yemeni goes through, but then what if you put a twist to it to heighten the tension?
That's awesome. I'm actually upset with myself that I didn't read it in advance. That would have been the appropriate thing to do as the interviewer. But yeah, no, we'll link it in the description, and we'll definitely I'll definitely read that. That's and you're talking about like having all these stories from the perspective of a Yemeni, and just kind of like the perspective of an immigrant and a perspective of just like basically bringing a lot of different perspective, right, for folks that maybe didn't kind of experience anything like that, right? So I know you recently went on a trip to Yemen, right?
Yeah.
I want to hear more about that. It's I think it was a part of a nonprofit kind of mission. So
Yeah.
Let's hear more about that.
So this is actually my second trip with that nonprofit, and shout out to Freedom Bakeries. So that's the nonprofit. So they do a bunch of work in Yemen. Mainly, they open bakeries and they literally give out free bread to internal refugees, to people who can't afford even daily bread. And they have a bunch of other projects. That they have water wells, they have farms that they also build. Then the produce will pay for the farmers, which they get a handsome salary. Then the profit is also used to the produce is also distributed as well. So great organization, trustworthy people, love them. I recently went on a trip to Yemen with them. We did a bunch of work in South Yemen in Aden, and I shot a few videos for them, a few interviews, and then we got at the very end, we got to go to Socotra, which is the island that every Yemeni or every even non-Yemeni that finds out about it becomes their dream to go to it. This is an island that has, if I'm not getting the number wrong, is like more than like 600 endemic species, which are like species that only exist in that island, and only can grow or live in that island, and nowhere else in the world. And this ranged from like trees, to animals like birds, and it just was a fascinating experience, because it has been my dream for the past, maybe I would say 10 years, because you don't grow up and you learn about Socotra in Yemen. Like, they don't talk about it in school, they don't talk about it. It's just not a general knowledge. Like, I didn't know that Yemen had an island. But we go there and you learn that they're Yemenis, but they speak Arabic, but they also have their like original language. They have a native language. It's called Soqatri. And so they have their own language, and you would think, oh, maybe just like a different dialect of Arabic, like, Moroccan Darija, or like, no, it's not. It's like a different language.
Okay.
And it's spoken with words that you would never, like, you've never heard before. Different language. Their culture is also, it's also very similar, but also very different. So there is another I guess city in Yemen. It's called Mahra, which is southeast, toward Oman. They also have a different language. It was called Mahri, and so they're influenced by Mahra a lot. Just in terms of, if you know about Mahra, then you will see how Socotra will become its own thing, because like Mahra is in Yemen, is in the mainland, but then they also have a little bit of different customs. They have their own language, and it just is very interesting that you will be living in the same country, influenced by the same history, but then have very different trajectory.
So, do you know like what the history behind like South Qatra is? Like, how did they like kind of start there, or like how did that culture develop?
I mean, there are a bunch of theories. When I read about it, I found out that, so some people believe that was part of Africa, was part of South Africa, and like over time it just got detached, and because it's actually very close to, I think, Djibouti.
Wow.
Yeah, it's close to Djibouti, and it's closer to Djibouti than it is to Yemen. So it's closer to mainland, the African continent, than it is to the Middle East. And so there's that theory, and then other theories say, it used to close the Red Sea, and it got detached, and now it's its own island. I mean, there is no consensus on like where it came from, but then, and I didn't read deeply on it, but it got colonized by the British for a very long time. The British actually tried to buy it, but like the Sultanate that was in control at the time refused. Was colonized, I think, by the Portuguese, if I'm not mistaken, for a while as well.
Oh wow.
And it was like a military base for a while. But it's gone through a lot, and then every time there is a shift of governance in the mainland, there is a shift of influence in Socotra as well. So recently, after the civil war and the the sort of like separation that's happening between the south and north of Yemen, is considered technically part of the South Yemen, like semi-transitional government.
Right.
But then there's also a lot of Emirati influence in it, and there's a lot of Emirati control. So right now, the electricity is literally fully operated by the Emirates, and so when they pay their bills, they pay it to the entity that sort of give them electricity, and they have better electricity than the mainland. It doesn't go off, is sustainable, is good.
What kind of population are we talking? Like, if you were to estimate, like, or like millions, or is it like a significant amount of people?
Not really. Not
okay.
yeah. Not I won't. I won't go into millions. And it's like a lot of it is like reservations.
Yeah.
Most of it is like natural reservations. It's not like cities,
like a jungle or something.
Yeah,
Okay.
and most of it is mountains.
Okay.
So it's very a lot of it is like mountains,
Yeah.
beautiful beaches. I mean, like gorgeous beaches.
It's crazy to me, like alhamdulillah, you know, like we live in this day and age where we have so much access, right, to like remote parts of the world
Yeah.
that previously you probably wouldn't even know existed. You know,
Yeah.
it's just like, oh yeah, you know, there's something like that may or may not be out there, right? It's and even like, I guess maybe it's like kind of what's the word? The word's slipping my mind, but naive of me, like thinking like, oh yeah, you know, we have all this technology, and you know, there, like, the entire world has been explored and we know everything. And
Yeah.
it's just like, but you know, you always hear like, oh yeah, there's new species they're finding in the Amazon.
Yeah.
Or just like there's just different parts of the world where there's just it's still like new things that are coming about, right? So
Yeah,
it's fascinating. It's fascinating, just to see like how many, like how much there is out there and how little we truly know.
Yeah.
You know?
No, it's true. It's true. And then you layer that with, this is like in in the country that you were born and grew up in, and
Yeah.
you actually know very little about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a fascinating culture. I mean, I didn't go through a culture shock, but I literally felt like this is like, I feel like I missed out on a lot for my educational experience in Yemen, because I feel like this is like part of.
But I mean, to be fair, I feel like that's a pretty normal thing. You know, whenever maybe if you're a local in a certain country or something like that, it's like, it's similarly like where people like New Yorkers say like, yeah, I've never been to the Statue of Liberty. It's because it's right there. Or let's say the Egyptian would be like, I've never been to the pyramids. You know,
Fair.
it's like whatever, you're worried about your own little, like, you know, whatever's going on. Yeah, you know, versus let's say you're a tourist, right?
Yeah.
To some extent, you were a tourist
I was.
when you went, and you're looking for like these like obscure adventure type things, right? Where as if when you're a local, you're like who cares? Like, I'm not, you know. It's
Fair point.
yeah. It's yeah. Like I said, like it's just I remember one of the points one of my friends made a while back. It's just like, in this day and age, we have access. Like we could be like middle class, lower class, whatever. We still have access to luxuries that kings from maybe like even 100 years ago didn't have access to. Like, we're talking about running water, AC. Like, you want cuisine from any, or like, I want from Afghan food in New York City. You could get it in like 15 minutes, right? You don't have to go to, you know, Central Asia to get Afghan food, right? So it's just like all these things, just being able to, like, there are people that have visited like dozens, if not like hundreds of countries, right? It's actually mind blowing, like how much access and luxury we have nowadays. You know, it's and I think that's like one of my favorite parts about traveling, is like, it gives you perspective. You know, when you travel, you're just like, wow, like, I'm really an ant. Like, you know, like, if you just zoom out a little bit, there's so much. There's like literally right now, like, let's say you went to Yemen. Those people are still there right now, living their lives, and they forget, like, they don't know who you are. Like, you know, like, you're a nobody. I'm a nobody. Like, it's just like, there's billions of people throughout the planet going about their day, doing their thing, and it's humbling. It's humbling. It's just like, hey, you know, like, you know, it's not all about you. You know, it's easy. It's easy to feel like, you know, oh, look at how big my problems are, and look at, you know, this and that and blah blah blah. Like, you know, you zoom out a little bit, and it's like, all right, you know what, things are gonna be all right, and you find maybe a level of contentness in that.
Yeah, I experience that literally every time I go back to Yemen, and it stays with me for like 6 months, maybe like a little bit more, a little bit less. that like my problems are not actually significant, because when we go there, we go to into refugee camps, we talk to refugees, we talk to people who can't afford like daily bread, literally bread there, like you can get 3 loaves of bread for like $1, and that will like feed you and probably feed a child as well. And so for a family, maybe like $2 will be enough for a whole family. And then you come back here and like your Amazon order doesn't come in 2 days, and like it's a problem.
Yeah.
So for me, that sense of perspective really comes back when, but then it fades away. Right. There's a problem with it. That it fades away. Like I wish I can stay with that mental state for forever, but it doesn't. But that's why you should always not depend only on travel for it to come, to be always grateful with or without traveling.
First and foremost, thank you for plugging Freedom Bakeries. So if somebody wanted to contribute, what would be the best way about going about that?
I guess go to their website.
Okay, so we'll link that in the.
Go to our website. They have an Instagram page that's pretty active. They post about the things that they do often.
Yeah.
But their website is fine. I mean, they're doing amazing work.
Yeah.
And you can contribute there.
Awesome. So we'll put that in the description link. We'll also put the link to so you have your socials, right? You have a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Hazawi Podcast.
Hazawi Podcast.
Okay. Yeah. MashaAllah. And let's say if anybody wants to reach out to you, if they want to connect with you or collaborate, how does one go about doing that?
You can. I have a website. I guess you can. No, don't go to my website. You can go to my website. I have. You can. I guess DM me on Instagram. My email is somewhere on my website. Instagram will do. I'm always on it. You can always reach out to me there. I have a weekly newsletter that I send.
Okay.
So if you want to sign up, go there. I just write insights about life experiences that I've had. I send writing tips, reading stuff. So stuff that make it to videos that also translate to newsletter, but it has more depth because I'm better at writing than I'm better at speaking. I can communicate ideas clearer in writing, just because I go through it multiple times and it's just my natural skill.
Yeah.
It's called Increments, so you can sign up on my website. Is mohamedsmorshed.com. So.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put the links to all that in the description. Yeah, thank you so much. This has been really insightful and really good reflections, in this podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll do more in the future. I hope everyone likes and follows and subscribes to all of Mohamed's work. It sounds like you're doing a lot of good things, and we'll see you all in the next one.
All right.
MashaAllah.
This was nice.